Hanji Khenpo Sodargye Jang Molum Khenpo Ngadiata Pakar Ngom Santo Sherma Do Tumba Tuche Janla Gisham Sar Nicharo Zeni Jankamsa Jawar Tuki Shenway Jime Panzo Jana Soran De Konjuto Pampor Shinji Lo.
To liberate beings, please generate bodhicitta before teaching. Now let us continue our teaching. We are now studying the 5th chapter of the Bodhicharyavatara. In this chapter, we are currently discussing the section that all virtuous qualities arise entirely from our own mind. When we study Mahayana treatises, there are 6 paramitas, that is, numerous bodhisattva practices. All the practices within the 6 paramitas are perfected through the purity of our own mind. On this topic, we have completed the teaching on the paramita of generosity. We have covered the topic of how the paramita of generosity is perfected in the mind. Today we move on to the second topic, the paramita of discipline. I think anyone who studies Mahayana Buddhism will understand that after arousing bodhicitta and engaging in the bodhisattva path, the 6 paramitas are indispensable practices. Earlier, we already discussed the perfection of generosity, so today we'll begin to learn the paramita of discipline. Actually, the paramita of discipline is also perfected by the power of the mind, because apart from the mind's resolve to abstain from negativity, there is no other so-called paramita, as stated in the verse, and where could fish, etc., be sent where they would not be killed? Disciplines taught to be transcendent from gaining the intent to abstain. The paramita of discipline is really rooted in the mind. In fact, its perfection relies entirely on the power of the mind. This is very reasonable. If it's not perfected in the mind, then the so-called paramita of discipline, or the person who keeps the precepts, would have to make sure that all external circumstances that he faces are completely pure at all times and places. But this is something no one can accomplish. If the paramita of discipline depended on external conditions, even the Buddha would be at fault for not having perfected it. But of course, no one would ever accept such a statement. The meaning here is that if we truly wish to maintain pure discipline, we should observe the precepts of not killing, not stealing, not engaging in sexual misconduct, not lying, and so on. There are naturally negative actions and prescribed actions. So, in order to keep these pure precepts, let's take not killing as an example. To keep the precept of not killing pure, if we attempted to relocate all the beings that could be targets of killing, such as fish, turtles, and other species in the world, this would simply be impossible. We can never relocate them all elsewhere, no matter what method we tried. This is something we simply cannot do. There are so many beings, both human and non-human, in this world. If we tried to keep the precept of not killing pure by sending all of them to a place where we couldn't kill them, this would be unrealistic. Similarly, if we wanted to avoid the misdeed of stealing, we would have to remove all possessions from our sight so that we would never even see any belongings that could be stolen. But in reality, no one could actually do this. In the same way, to avoid sexual misconduct, it's impossible to remove all objects of desire from our environment, for example, sending away all men and women who could arouse attachment. Similarly, if we wanted to avoid lying and try to avoid everyone who can understand language, never speaking or interacting with anyone, that would be impossible to do in this world. So, to maintain pure discipline by depending on external conditions is unrealistic. We could never purify all external circumstances and remove every obstacle to create a perfect environment for practice. If only that could be counted as the paramita of discipline, then not only us, but even all Buddhas of the past wouldn't have been able to achieve this during their own training. Even during the Buddha's time, there were still many people who committed sexual misconduct, killing, stealing, and so on. So we should understand that keeping pure precepts is not about external things, nor is it about anything outside of ourselves. This is something everyone should be clear about. So how could it be possible to send all the fish and other beings to another place where they would not be killed? This is simply impossible. So when can we say that we have truly perfected discipline? It is when we truly resolve not to engage in negative actions. For example, when the thought, I will never kill, arises in our minds that at that very moment the precept of not killing is kept pure and complete. Whenever we generate the resolve that we will never engage in sexual misconduct, when this determination arises in our mind stream, the paramita of discipline regarding sexual misconduct is perfected. Therefore, we should understand that the paramita of discipline does not mean that all external objects that may cause us to violate our precepts must be sent away or dispelled somewhere else, and only then is it truly perfected. That is not the case. In terms of the essence of discipline, some schools believe that it is a non-concurrent formation. Some schools believe it is a type of form. There are different views regarding this point, but in the treatises of the Chittamatra school and above, the essence of discipline is a mind that refrains from negative actions. This is a crucial point that everyone must remember. The essence of discipline is the resolve to abandon negative actions. It is this very resolve that constitutes the essence of discipline. This is a key point, so please remember it. Whether in Madhyamaka, Chittamatra or Vajrayana, this is commonly accepted. Whenever they teach the paramita of discipline, they will cite Shantideva's view to illustrate the essence of discipline is the mind. So as practitioners, we need to understand this. The essence of precepts is the state of mind. It is not something external, nor is it any kind of imperceptible form. From the ultimate Mahayana perspective, such views are not accepted. So, whenever you truly give rise to the resolve in your mind, from now on, I will never again commit any negative actions. And this is not just something you say, but a firm vow that truly comes from your heart. Then that is what we call the paramita of discipline. So, when is it perfected? Just as Chandrakirti says in the introduction to the Middle Way, when a bodhisattva attains the second bhumi, they do not break precepts even in dreams. At that point, the paramita of discipline is considered perfected. Before that, does it mean our environment has no influence at all? That is not the case. Of course, for beginners, as Lord Atisha once said, it's very important to pay attention to their environment and make careful choices. Otherwise, before attaining the bhumis, we will inevitably be influenced by our surroundings. So, at first, it's best to live in a quiet place to help keep your precepts pure. Choosing such a peaceful environment is indeed necessary, but if we always rely on external conditions to perfect our discipline, then it would be impossible for us to do so anywhere. Ultimately, receiving and keeping precepts is a decision you make in your own mind. Some people might say, I want to keep my precepts pure, so I have to stay alone in a room and avoid all contact with others, or I must go to a quiet place, otherwise it won't work. Some think the paramita of discipline means staying away from friends, relatives, and outside distractions. Of course, this is understandable for those just starting out. It's good to stay away from worldly distractions in busy places, and sometimes it's necessary to avoid the influence of ordinary people. But even if you live in a quiet place, does it guarantee your discipline will be perfected? Not necessarily. Sakya Pandita also said that if someone has a difficult temperament, even if they live in a quiet place, their mind still cannot be tamed. But if someone truly has wisdom, even if they live in a busy city, their mind can still be gentle and kind. It's like a wild animal. Even if it lives in a quiet place, its temperament is still fierce. But a fine horse with a gentle temperament remains gentle and untamed, even in a busy city. This analogy helps to illustrate the point. So, as practitioners, we need to understand that discipline is perfected in the mind. This is something all Mahayana treatises agree on. As we all know, although Hinayana has its own explanations of the essence of discipline, from the Mahayana perspective, it is the mind that is free from all stains and defilements. This is what is called the paramita of discipline. Not only Buddhists, but even worldly people understand this. For example, not long ago at our academy, a mobile company wanted to install a free signal tower here worth over 3 million yuan. We told them this is a pure center for learning the Dharma. It's not helpful for the Sangha here to use mobile devices. So we didn't agree to let them install it. Later, a leader said, but don't you teach that discipline is perfected in your own mind, not in external conditions? We replied, yes, the essence of discipline is indeed a mental resolve, but these mobile phones and smart devices are not really useful or smart when it comes to helping us manage our affairs or maintain pure discipline. Some people carry several phones in their bags, but even with all these phones, they still don't get much done each day. In ancient times, people didn't have these things but could accomplish many things. Nowadays, people have many phones at home, at work, and they also have portable ones that they carry in their hands. For practitioners, these external conditions are not always necessary for practice, but for beginners, it is very necessary to create a quiet environment. In the past, great masters of the Nyingma and Kadampa schools placed great importance on avoiding all distractions, because the essence of discipline depends on one's own mind. A wise person who keeps pure precepts can maintain their discipline even while living in a busy city. But if someone's mind is not pure, even if they are completely isolated from others, they will still find ways to break the precepts. That's why the Mahayana treatises say the 6 paramitas are all perfected in the mind. This principle is very reasonable, and we should understand it. Our compassionate Buddha also taught in the sutras what is the paramita of discipline. It is the mind that renounces harming others. Only when this intention arises can it be called the paramita of discipline. Shantideva explains this according to the sutras. So everyone should be clear about what is meant by discipline. We should understand how the Mahayana views the essence of discipline and when the paramita of discipline is perfected in our mind streams. This is the teaching on the paramita of discipline. Next, we'll talk about the paramita of patience. The verses explain it like this. How could one kill belligerent beings who are as infinite as space? Vanquishing this one angry mind is like defeating all those foes. This means that not only the paramita of generosity and the paramita of discipline are rooted in on our minds, but the third one, the paramita of patience, is also practiced and perfected in our own minds. This is very reasonable. If patience isn't grounded in the mind and we try to eliminate all external objects of anger, not just for ourselves, even the Buddha, who is endowed with all the qualities of perfect enlightenment, would be at fault for not having perfected the paramita of patience. Why? Because even after the Buddha attained enlightenment, there were still countless stubborn and untamed beings in the world. But to say that the Buddha did not perfect the paramita of patience would be incorrect. There is no such statement in history. No one with wisdom would accept such an idea. So through this reasoning, we can see that the paramita of patience does not depend on external circumstances. It is perfected through the strength of our own mind. This also makes sense according to the Mahayana treatises. So how is it explained in the verse? If, in reality, all external enemies had to be completely eliminated before the paramita of patience could be perfected, then that would simply be impossible. Why is this? Because in any world, as long as it's not a pure land, there will always be countless beings who are rough, stubborn, and hard to work with. There are so many of them, it's really beyond imagination. You could say that such beings are everywhere. They are countless and limitless, truly innumerable. If you tried to subdue every single one of them, it would be impossible, and it is not necessary at all, trying to eliminate all your enemies one by one. I think that for any practitioner, trying to perfect your paramita in this way, by getting rid of all people and all enemies, that's really not the way of a Buddhist, and honestly there's no need for it. Vanquishing this one angry mind is like defeating all those foes. If we use mindfulness and awareness and contemplate in a proper way and observe with a mind of unwavering patience, then we can overcome the very frightening anger and resentment in our own mind, and we can uproot it at the source. If we can truly overcome our anger, our only real enemy, then it's as if all the countless external enemies have also disappeared. None of them will be our enemies anymore. All those enemies, both human and non-human, and all the unfavorable circumstances you face will be transformed. That's why the Buddha also taught in the sutras that if anger is pacified, then all external enemies will be eliminated. Otherwise, enemies will only increase the more you try to destroy them. So In this way, we should understand that it's simply impossible to get rid of every enemy in the world. Sometimes in the world, people think that in order to win a war, they must wipe out their enemies. But even if you kill your enemies in battle, the other side also has their own friends and family, and they have their descendants, generation after generation. So it's just not possible to wipe out everyone. It is like cutting vines. The more you cut, the more they grow. In the end, you simply cannot overcome the power of external enemies. So we should know that the words of our compassionate Buddha are truly extraordinary Mahayana instructions. Through careful observation and practice, if we find that our anger has diminished and our attitude has improved, then no matter where we go, the world will always feel joyful and peaceful to us. But if we haven't dealt atomic bombs, the equipment, actions, and in the end, to ourselves. With advanced technology, we create toxic gases and pollution, and as a result, the whole environment, the land, the oceans, and the sky becomes completely polluted. Little by little, humanity is destroying itself. But the true strength of Buddhism lies in this: treating all sentient beings in the world with an attitude of peace. This is truly the most peaceful and harmonious force and wisdom in the world. But there are very few people in the world who really understand this. Even though there are some respected peace leaders in the world and some people who genuinely have loving kindness and compassion, even if they understand this principle, for most people it's not always easy to truly put it into practice in daily life. As Buddhists, we should do our best within our capacity and influence to bring kindness and warmth to those around us. Even a small act of loving kindness can make a difference. I believe this is very important. Of course, it doesn't have to be something big. Within our own ability, even helping just one person is meaningful. For example, just now on my way to class, I saw a newcomer carrying a big bag, and he looked out of breath and was struggling. One of our Dharma friends went over to help him and asked, "Do you need a hand? Let me carry your big backpack for you." Honestly, I felt really happy to see that. Why? Because being Mahayana followers doesn't necessarily mean inspiring thousands of people to perform great deeds or generate bodhicitta. If each of us can do even a small good deed within our own abilities, even just helping one person, I believe this too is a way of sharing the light and power of compassion. If everyone in the world could treat all beings with a calm and compassionate heart, the world would truly be a wonderful place. The world would become very beautiful. But unfortunately, many people don't know this approach at all. They often think about how to deal with others, which can lead to a lot of problems. But this is just how the world thinks. Everyone has their own intentions and goals. But if we use the true principles of Buddhism to guide our interactions, I think everyone will understand. The key points in the Bodhicharyavatara are truly relevant and useful for everyone. For example, if you can really overcome anger in your own mind, then at home you'll feel that everyone in your family is a good person. Everyone around you will seem kind. There won't be a single bad person in your eyes. And in your social group, all the members will seem very friendly to you. Whenever you look at them, you will always see them with a smile. It would be impossible to look at them with a harsh or unfriendly expression. So what we really need now is the spirit of great compassion taught in the Bodhicharyavatara. Next, let's use an analogy to further explain this principle. The next verse says, "How could there be sufficient leather to to cover the earth entirely. With just the leather for my soles, it is as if the whole earth's covered. This is an analogy, and what it means is that all we need to do is eliminate the anger in our own mind stream, and that alone pacifies all external enemies. This analogy can be explained as follows. If we were to walk barefoot on the ground, we would naturally be afraid of the thorns, sharp stones, and gravel beneath our feet. All these sharp things could hurt us, pierce our feet, and cause them to bleed or suffer other injuries. People without wisdom try to solve this by wanting to cover the entire ground with leather so their feet won't get hurt. They want to cover every place they go with leather or something similar. They try to cover every place they need to go one by one. But to cover everything like this is simply impossible. Everyone knows that, let alone the whole earth. Even just the places one person has been since childhood are already so many. If you try to cover every single place, like laying out carpets everywhere, using leather to cover all those places, it's just not realistic at all. When His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche taught the Bodhisattva, let alone the whole world, even just in general, if you try to cover the Larung Valley with leather, the Larung Valley is 3 or almost 4 kilometers across, and if you tried to cover all of that with leather, how many yaks would you have to kill? And even then, could you really cover it all? No one could manage that, and there's no need to do so either. But some people, without thinking it through, want to make the whole environment perfect, to smooth everything out. But this is something no one can achieve. So the best approach is simple: to use a small piece of leather for your feet. In the past, people often made shoe soles out of a small piece of leather. With this, your shoe soles are well protected and very sturdy. Then, wherever you go wearing these shoes, your feet are always protected. There's nothing that can hurt or pierce your feet. So wearing these shoes, you can go anywhere you like. There's no need to cover the whole earth. No one could possibly cover the entire earth. But as long as you wear shoes, you can go anywhere with ease. It's always convenient and safe. When I used to herd yaks, sometimes, especially in summer, it was fine to go barefoot. But in autumn, like around this time of year, sometimes due to our economic situation, I didn't have shoes, so I would walk barefoot. When walking barefoot in autumn, it felt like the ground was full of thorns and stones. There was an elderly woman who lived next to us, and she wore a pair of shoes. When she walked ahead, I would follow behind her and feel quite envious. To avoid getting hurt, I would step exactly where she stepped, thinking that since she had already stepped there, all the thorns and sharp things must have been pressed down. But in reality, because she had real shoes, when I stepped in the same place, I would still get hurt quite often. So if we only try to rely on external things to protect ourselves, it's actually very difficult to avoid getting hurt. But if you have your own pair of shoes, wherever you go, you are well protected. Your feet won't get hurt at all. This really is a wonderful analogy. And throughout Buddhist history, countless great masters, scholars, and practitioners have reflected on this analogy, using it to help tame the anger in their own minds. If we think about it carefully, it really is like this. If we tried to change or get rid of every so-called bad person in the world, driving them all away one by one, it would be impossible anywhere. Some people say Westerners have good character, some say Easterners do. I've traveled to many places myself, and everywhere there are both good and bad people. But if you really expect every so-called bad person to never get angry with you or never cause you harm, no matter what you do, it's just not possible in this world. So, after learning this wonderful analogy from Shantideva, we understand the key to practice is to look within and work on our own minds. If we can truly tame our own mind, then wherever we go, life will feel peaceful and free of obstacles. Likewise, although I am unable to keep external things at bay, I'll keep this mind of mine in check. What need to ward off anything else? Actually, the previously analogy really makes this point clear. In the same way, it's simply impossible to subdue all external enemies, whether human or non-human. In our short lifetime, it's unrealistic to try to conquer or eliminate them all one by one. Even some of the most famous figures in history, like Hitler, wanted to become the ruler of the whole world, but it was never possible. So for ordinary people like us, no matter who you are, it simply can't be done. No one can subdue all external enemies. So what is the only real solution? It's to use the Mahayana view and methods to tame the anger in our own minds. whether it's through mindfulness and awareness, as mentioned before, or by frequently observing and training the mind, if we can truly subdue our own anger, then what need is there to try to smooth out all external circumstances? It's unnecessary and doesn't really help. So, in your own mind stream, if you can truly give rise to the resolve that even in the face of danger, from now on, I will never harm any sentient being. If you generate this intention in your mind, then all enemies have already been dealt with. So, the Mahayana Bodhisattva's way of practice is first to adjust oneself, to make the aspiration not to harm sentient beings. In the past, Dromtonpa asked Lord Atisha, if while practicing the Mahayana path, others harm me, what should I do? Atisha replied, you must practice patience. What if someone tries to kill me? Atisha said, you should still practice patience. If others harm you, you should see it as repaying your past karmic debts. Contemplate in that way, and your paramita of patience will be perfected. So for those of us who practice the paramita of patience, it's essential to remember this key point. When facing difficulties as practitioners, we should not immediately resort to weapons or other means to fight back. That's not the way of a true practitioner. I know some people once said, I've studied the Bodhicharyavatara, so now I won't argue or fight with you. If I hadn't studied the Bodhicharyavatara, I would have beaten you up long ago. I think this kind of statement actually shows some understanding of the key point. If you haven't understood this key point, just like ordinary people, it's you hit me, I hit you, then things can quickly become quite troublesome. So I think as Buddhists, it's best not to talk about our own realizations or lofty spiritual states. Instead, we should focus more on discussing the principles of the Dharma. These days, some people boast, I have high realizations in Chan, or I practice the Pure Land School and I can remain in single-pointed concentration, or I have attained a realization in Vajrayana, and so on. They brag about themselves and set their sights too high. But sometimes when these people truly encounter adversity, for example, in daily life, when you run into something unpleasant or face difficulties, can you really face them with a calm and peaceful mind? If you truly can handle or reflect on the situation peacefully, it shows your level of realization is indeed good. This is something we can all acknowledge. Some individuals claim to be highly accomplished, yet when they truly encounter challenging circumstances, especially when others harm or criticize them, they cannot even bear a single remark. This shows that they still need the instructions of the Bodhicharyavatara. Without practicing these key points, boasting is meaningless. It's just empty talk and has no real value. Therefore, in our practice, we must always use Mahayana instructions to examine our own mind stream. This is very important. Of course, for someone like me, it's a bit embarrassed to say this, but I truly aspire to these teachings myself, and I hope that we can apply them to overcome adversities in our practice. In this way, living in the human world is meaningful. Nowadays, some people tend to talk about things that lack real substance. This is not very meaningful. When we talk, can we focus on the knowledge we have learned? If we can focus on the new terms, new knowledge, and new methods of contemplation and reasoning that we learn, this kind of discussion is truly admirable. These days, some people's topics are often not related to practice. The talk about family, children, grandchildren, or grandparents, or about in-laws and other family matters. Sometimes it's about clothes or work, or perhaps about money and wealth. Of course, as people living in the world, it's not realistic to say nothing at all. But if our conversations are always centered on these everyday matters and we talk about them endlessly, it may not be so beneficial. If we often talk about these things, it's natural for our minds to dwell on them, and our actions may also follow in the same direction. So it's worth considering how we want to spend our short lives wisely. As omniscient Longchenpa taught, our human life is very short, and what we're doing now may not always be so meaningful, so it's best not to be too attached. In Finding Rest in Illusion, it says, treat everything before yesterday as a dream of yesterday, treat today's matters as today's dream, and treat everything after tomorrow as tomorrow night's dream. If we can do this, we won't be so attached to things. If there is no strong attachment, then we won't spend much time on things that are not meaningful in our short existence. Instead, we will generate renunciation and bodhicitta and try our best to put it into practice. Nowadays, I can see that many people's thinking has changed a bit. Their attitude towards life now is different from before. Though many people cannot spare much time for Dharma study, they regularly gather to study together on Sundays. Of course, this is also related to the group leaders. If the leaders are responsible, the group tends to be more organized. The members would often gather to learn Buddhist teachings. In many places now there's this kind of learning atmosphere. Hearing such news, it is truly encouraging. Our human life is really short. If we don't make good use of it, if we don't give rise to even a little bodhicitta in our mind, if we don't develop a truly beneficial attitude for self and others, then living in this world from a certain perspective is not very meaningful. We know that animals live just to eat and drink, but as humans, we should set our goals higher. Otherwise, apart from the transient joys of the present life, if we don't even care about our own future lives, we may not be taking full responsibility for ourselves. There was once an intellectual who was not even a Buddhist, but he thought deeply every day, and he said, as a human being, it's not right if I don't care about my future life. If future life did not exist, I could just idle away. But if there is, why am I not preparing for it now? After much reflection and self-encouragement, he finally took up Buddhism. So I think that for wise people, just like we talked about in Buddhist logic, they enter the Buddhist path on their own, while others may need to be urged by others to take refuge and generate bodhicitta, and eventually, little by little, they enter Buddhism, even if they're not so willing at first. But in any case, I think everyone should not just go through the motions after entering Buddhism. In our actual conduct, we should engage in something meaningful. Wherever we are, whenever we interact with anyone, whatever we discuss, it's always important to keep our future lives and the Dharma in mind. In everyday life, it's quite common for people to gather, chat, laugh, and enjoy food and drink together. But these only bring temporary happiness. Their benefit doesn't go much further than that. So, as Buddhists, we should set aside some of our time and energy to prepare for our future lives as well. After all, our human body won't last forever. So, it's wise to make some preparations for what comes next. Next, let's discuss the paramita of diligence. Diligence is also perfected through the power of the mind. The verse states, even with body and speech, results of feeble conduct are not like the fruit of rousing one clear thought, rebirth in such as Brahma's realm. This is what is meant here by diligence. The meaning of diligence will be explained later in this text. To cultivate a joyful attitude toward virtuous dharmas is called the paramita of diligence. There are some key terms I hope everyone will keep in mind. For example, earlier we mentioned mindfulness, awareness, and carefulness. Recently, during our exams, some Dharma friends spoke at length. When asked what mindfulness or awareness was, they failed to grasp the main point. Here, to so-called diligence means the joyful mind we have toward virtuous dharmas. Of course, the definition of diligence here is somewhat different from the usual understanding. For example, if we perform prostrations every day, people consider us very diligent. Getting up at 4 in the morning to do prostrations is a form of diligence in terms of body. Or some may always reciting Amitabha, Amitabha, reciting day and night without stopping. It may seem that this person is truly very diligent. But the most crucial aspect is the diligence of the mind. If the mind is especially focused and not distracted by external things, this is true diligence. So, the paramita of diligence is not necessarily about our body and speech. It has to do with our own minds. Why? Here's how it is explained. If we cultivate a clear and virtuous thought or intention, a virtuous, clear and stable mind, or a thought of compassion, then it can lead to rebirth in the Brahma realm. The Brahma realm refers to the first dhyana. This shows that the mind is extremely important. No matter how diligent your body and speech are, with a feeble mind, which is the main condition, it is simply impossible to attain rebirth in the Brahma realm. We all know that, according to the Hinayana view, it's not easy to be reborn in the Brahma realm of the form realm. Those who have studied the Abhidharmakosha will know if a being of the desire realm wants to be reborn in the form realm, first they must accomplish the single-pointed concentration in the desire realm. But such a mind requires not giving rise to discursive thoughts, even for a moment. This is a very stable mind, free from laziness, dullness, and so on. It is a mind of clarity, free from the 5 faults. But for ordinary people, especially those who have never practiced, it is very difficult for such a mind to arise. But sometimes, if our mind is especially concentrated, whether it is compassion or loving kindness, even if we have never practiced the meditative concentrations of the 4 dhyanas in the form realm, still, by relying on this clear and stable mind, there is a chance to be reborn in the form realm. This does happen. This is based on a story from the Nirvana Sutra as taught by the Buddha. The Nirvana Sutra records such a story. Once, a mother and daughter were crossing the Ganges at its confluence with the Yamuna River, when suddenly the water began to rise. Both were about to be submerged and drowned. At that moment, the mother generated strong compassion for her daughter. She thought, "Let my daughter live, even if I must die." She wished only for her daughter's survival. She thought, "I would rather die myself." Her daughter also gave rise to the same strong mind. She thought, "If only my mother survives, I would rather drown." At that moment, both of them, with such a firm and virtuous resolve, both died in that very stable state of mind. After death, because their minds were so pure and virtuous at that time, with the power of their minds, they were reborn in the Brahma realm. This story illustrates the power of the mind. Generally, to be reborn in the form realm, one must accomplish at least one of the 4 dhyanas. With a coarse mind of the desire realm, it is impossible to be reborn in the form realm. It is not possible to go directly to the form realm, but sometimes, when the mind is especially focused, there is still a chance to be reborn there. There is such an opportunity to be reborn there, just as the story above illustrates. So even if our body and speech are extremely diligent, if the mind is not focused at all, then accomplishing the paramita of diligence is very difficult, because the essence of diligence is to truly delight in virtue. Some people may appear very diligent on the surface, but the key is whether the mind can be focused. For virtue, one must have a wholehearted and dedicated attitude. If you don't, then even if you look very diligent on the outside, you may not achieve the result you aspire to. So, observing and training the mind is extremely important. Of course, sometimes even external actions can gradually lead to Buddhahood. The Lotus Sutra also presents this perspective. If someone with a distracted mind enters a stupa or temple and recites Namo Buddha even once, they will eventually attain Buddhahood. So even if someone makes offerings at a monastery or stupa with a distracted mind and recites Namo Buddha even once, they will gradually attain liberation. From a gradual perspective, this is possible, but ultimately the paramita of diligence must be accomplished in the mind. So even if you recite sutras or do prostrations outwardly, these alone do not necessarily complete the paramita of diligence. Therefore, in the Dhammapada, it is also said this way: even if you recite many sutras, if you do not understand them, what use is it? Even if we recite thousands of sutras and treatises, if we do not understand their true meaning and our mind is not focused, then we may not gain much benefit. Some Chan masters in the past have also expressed similar thoughts. For example, Master Han Shan of the Ming dynasty also said, "It is easy to recite the sutras, but difficult to understand them." This means that it is relatively easy to recite the scriptures on the surface. In many monasteries, at 4 or 5 in the morning, everyone lines up and recites together. Of course, there is merit in this, there is no doubt about it, but there is a big difference between the merit gained through a focused mind and the merit from just reciting verbally. That's why Chan masters have always said that our physical actions certainly plant virtuous roots and create merit tending to happiness, which is very powerful. But the true merit tending to liberation depends on a very focused mind. Whether we are listening to teachings or doing our daily practice or studying this treatise, it's crucial for us to keep the mind focused. Merely reading the text while sitting in the audience doesn't mean your mind is actually focused. You need to focus on the meaning of the Dharma while listening to the teaching. This is important. Nowadays, take the Bodhisattva, for example. Some people wonder whether they can receive its transmission simply by reading its text. I mentioned this some time ago. There is no historical precedent for receiving transmission through the eye faculty. Otherwise, there would be no need to request transmission of the entire Kangyur. We could just read it once and receive transmission. So such claim is unreasonable. The sound of reading has to reach your ears. Now, thanks to the incredible power of science and technology, according to the tradition of the great masters of the past, as long as you hear the sound of the teaching, you can receive its transmission. So at the very least, students outside the academy should listen to the teaching. Otherwise, if you just listen today, then travel tomorrow, and then the day after that, you're off somewhere else, and so on. Some people in their whole life never even find the time to listen to a single treatise. It's really a pity. Sometimes when I see this happening, I feel a bit disappointed. There is no diligence at all. But when I see others being diligent, I feel genuinely happy for them. Of course, whether I am happy or not doesn't really matter. But for you personally, encountering the Dharma is truly rare. While receiving this teaching, you should at least receive the oral transmission in full. No matter where you go, it's best to listen to this teaching at least once without interruption. This is the most basic requirement. At the same time, you should reflect on the content that is transmitted. Once you understand the meanings, try to apply them to actual practice and allow them to guide your daily life. I am explaining this text based on the sutras and treatises. Sometimes there may be slips of the tongue or minor mistakes, but regarding the main principles, there should be no errors. So, when we study the Dharma, it's important to have the right attitude. As Buddhists, it's not necessary to be like practitioners of some ancient Indian traditions who relied solely on intense physical austerities to achieve enlightenment, such as enduring the intense heat and discomfort of the 5 fires, standing on one leg, or other such practices like eating grass as yaks do, or imitating the crowing of roosters and so on. There are many ascetic practices among them. Although such asceticism is a hardship of body and speech, it is very difficult to achieve true realization this way. We should follow the teachings of our compassionate Buddha, which states that the root of all liberation is first to have no attachment to samsara. When we see samsara, we feel there is nothing to envy, and we see it with detachment. This is renunciation. Then, on this basis, try to reduce the selfish and negative aspects of our own mind and cultivate the positive, altruistic qualities, the mind of great compassion and kindness. We can cultivate it now. Our mind can be changed. Our mind is not something that can never be changed. It is not a stubborn, unconditioned phenomenon. Countless accomplished masters have adjusted their own mind through mind training and finally achieved realization. So please don't lose hope in yourself. Oh, I am such a distracted person. I drink a lot, I also smoke, and I have done bad things in the past. I definitely have no hope. Or you think, well, if I am going to fall, let me fall. I don't care anymore. This is not a helpful attitude. It's better not to think this way. Every sentient being can have hope for liberation. So now that we have encountered the Dharma, we should make the most of this precious opportunity. In this way, our mind will gradually merge with the nature of Dharma, becoming inseparable from it. We can eventually attain liberation. Coming back to our topic, the paramita of diligence is entirely established through the mind. It's not just about what we do with our bodies. Of course, body and mind are closely connected. I've heard that some Dharma friends here basically don't even lie down to sleep at night, but sit up all night. This is a kind of physical asceticism. In fact, it is also an indispensable method for adjusting the mind. If you let your body and speech become too careless or indulgent, it will gradually and directly affect the diligence of your mind. But if deep in your heart you have strong confidence in virtue, you'll think, I should make the most of this short life and devote it fully to virtue. With this attitude, your body and speech will naturally support your practice. So I also rejoice in those who engage in virtues through their body and speech. For example, don't eat after noon or avoid idle chatter. Sometimes they wear a big sign on their chest that says noble silence. It might look a bit serious at times, but that's okay. If you feel comfortable with it, that's good. Some people might do it just for appearances. With such a sign, others may think, oh, this person is really remarkable. Look, they do not speak. But simply not speaking doesn't necessarily make one remarkable. What really matters is how you feel in your heart. there are so many meaningless chatters. I'd better refrain from idle speech and try to say meaningful things. If you think this way, the merit and meaning are truly great. So for the paramita of diligence, the key is to be diligent and focused in your mind. This is something everyone should understand. All right, let's stop here for today.
Bandangara Badma Sodargye Bandangara Badma Sodargye Bandangara Badma Sodargye